Welcome to the Brand Scientist Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Bruss. Today I'm joined by Olaf from One IP International and my fabulous co-founder, Grant. Tom, good day, gentlemen. How you doing?
Hello,
Very well, Rob.
good morning.
Very well.
Awesome. Great to see you both here, gents, and looking forward to doing a show with you here today. We're going to be talking about IP. We're going to be talking about branding and all things that matter in business that are administrative and a little bit legal. Sometimes these topics are a little bit dry and boring, but we're going to spice it up here for you today. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with that. Olaf, as we get into today's show, tell us a little bit about your business, One IP International, where it comes from, how you got involved, and tell us about what you actually do.
It all started back in 2010 when I made my way from good old Germany to Aussie. I'm a lawyer since 2003 or so. Started specializing in intellectual property at a very early stage when I was 30. Started my own business in Germany. But you know, Germany is nice, but Germany, don't get me wrong, is so German. They are so they're so conservative, and that means, like, in a business environment, you can see it now. The hell breaks loose because what they're doing with their budget at the moment, they're overly conservative in investing. At the same time, infrastructure is going downhill, but they're like, we need to, so this is I was so sick of it. So I decided, okay, I use my skills and I advise on a more international, global level that could involve Germans, but let's go to Aussie. So I went to Australia, and here the audience is more international. As it comes to no surprise, because Australia, they're coming from everywhere. All of a sudden, I had international clients from various jurisdictions. And so it went hand in hand that I didn't advise Germans on trademark matters anymore. I advised New Zealanders, Canadians, US citizens, and Aussies, of course, on Australian trademarks, US trademarks, Canadian, European community trademarks, and whatnot. And so the idea of one-stop shop, one approach in Sydney for a business owner just around the corner to advise on a global level IP was born immediately, because Aussies are so different to Germans in that sense that you are a small kitchen bench business and you have a great idea, and because Australia is so far away from everything, they go from the very first moment, they go, okay, next year we're going to go to US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, whereas the Germans like, let's see, in 10 years time I maybe invest in the Netherlands. So here they wanted to, instead of dealing with 50 different law firms. If I put it to the extreme, I had one client, small business, t-shirt business, hair products business, gentlemen's fashion business, skateboard. They started back then very small from a garage, and they grew aggressively. And all of a sudden they had the problem that they needed protection they had 26 brands in 100 whatnot countries. Oh, okay. So do I want to deal with 50 different law firms? And so with them, we grew to a stage where we can now proudly say, come to us. We're in the heart of Sydney in Barangaroo. Just if you want to have a coffee, chat to us. We are real people. And we speak English. We speak 6 languages in the office, like lawyers from other countries too, from Colombia, from Germany and whatnot. So they have different backgrounds. What we can't do ourselves, we do with people that we know. So I don't speak Mandarin, but I know people in China that can do the job for us. So, and in the US, until recently, we could do the job because we speak English. But after Mr. Trump said America first, they put it so that only US lawyers can deal with trademark matters over there. So instead of going shopping and get a very bad deal, people get a good deal with us because it's in our network. And for them is they're paying us. And if something goes wrong, they come to us and not dealing with 5 different US law firms. So that is how the idea was born. And actually, for me, it's a dream come true. I'm so far away from speaking German all the time, not to mention having German customers all day. They are good, but they can be a pain in the butt. Pardon me. So sitting in the Sydney office and advising on international IP matters, focusing on the strategic approach, because like IP, interrupt me if I'm talking too much. So this is my problem. My wife keeps saying, you have your dream job all day. So it is the strategy that is behind IP. IP in most countries, you can go on a website, you can lodge it, you can deal with it yourself. Lawyers are not even necessary, like in terms of you can physically do the process for yourself. But do you understand what it entails? What's behind it? I can lodge my tax return myself. Do I do it? No, I don't, because I have no clue what I'm saying to the ATO if they're coming back to me. That's why. And to be honest, I don't want to deal with it. I hate figures and numbers, and I have no clue about it. Why would I do it? With IP, it's more than physically typing in a name into a search bar with the trademark office, seeing if it's available. You get a blurb of 300 pages of similar trademarks. Now, how do you determine whether this is too similar to your entailed trademark that you wish to register, or if it's far away to avoid likelihood of confusion? You can do the job physically yourself, but do you know what you're getting yourself into? And that is, don't start IP matters without having a strategy, without you knowing what the next step is and how do you respond to either trademark offices around the world, because they can be very nasty. They consider themselves the guards of the trademark register, and they try to brush you off. It's just normal. Deal with it, but be aware and know what you should be doing.
I need to stop you there for a second. So why is there protection required?
Why? Because put it this way, not having trademark registration is like building a nice and shiny house, a 5-story house like the Trump Tower. No, Trump Tower is more than 5 stories, but like, let's say, put it to the extreme, build the Trump Tower in the middle of New York, and refuse to register the land around it. So you build a piece of fine art on that piece of land in New York, but you don't own the ground. So that means you don't own the house, and you build it without ownership. Only trademark registration gives you the ownership over a name, a logo or a slogan, or even more fancy trademarks like a sound mark or a smell mark, like something that is distinctive and is your badge of origin that attracts customers. If it's a really like Apple, for instance, one of the most valuable brands on earth now, there is so much work behind making Apple a great brand. When they started in the garage in 2000, in the 80s, everyone was laughing about them. Oh, here, look at their bite of Apple logo, how funny. Bunch of young dudes, they will never get there. Guess who laughs last? They are now like rich and famous. But now, imagine them without trademark protection. It wouldn't be that famous, because it would mean that a logo or a name that is famous for something is owned by no one, and so it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long until someone comes and says it's fully legal because it's owned by no one. I take it, and then they take over. So refusing to register means you build a fine house on a piece of land that is not owned by you. So your neighbor sees it, wants your house, registers it for himself, and sends you out.
But now let's get the elephant out the room. You know, a lot of business owners think that this is expensive, lawyers are expensive, so therefore we'll do this a little bit later. What is your thoughts around that?
I hear this 3 times a week, not daily, but like I hear it very often. Look, we have these half-an-hour conversations where I tell them everything about IP and so forth, and why it's a good value of your business. At the moment, I don't have the funds. I do it later when we are successful, because only then I know it makes sense to protect. But it's the other way around. When you're successful and it's not protected, so it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to anyone actually, it's available for everyone. And there are so many clever people out there. They see, oh, whoa, okay, it's mega successful and it's owned by no one, so it's completely legal that I take it over. And we have these cases where people refuse to register, and they do it when they're rich and famous, and this day never comes, because they also forget about it. And then,
so is it expensive?
No, I come to that in a second. So then their competitor comes, takes over, and they go, oh, this is unfair, we did it. No one cares. Law is not about fairness. Let me put this straight. Law is not about fairness. Law is everyone having a say. Everyone is having a chance to register. Why didn't you take it at the time it was available? It was yours. You refused to do it. And now your competitor can legally do it. So, sorry, what was your question again?
So, is it expensive for businesses? Though they always say it's too expensive to invest right now because they're busy setting it up. Is it an expensive exercise?
It can become an expensive exercise if you make the third step before the first. So, IP, what I just said, it's more than typing in something on a website and uploading things. It is about having the strategy. What do you do? If you're someone that wants to offer a service or a good in, let's say, 20 countries around the world, and you're a small business in Aussie and you're sitting here and you think of, I don't know if it's successful or not. But like an Olympian runner, you don't start at the Olympics if you think of, I'm not gonna win. You all think you will be a success, and that's why you're confident to invest in the future of your brand. So you foreshadow in 5 years' time, I'm in 20 countries of this world. And what do? You don't throw all the money for protection of 20 countries immediately into the ring. You don't do it because it takes away cash flow from you. If you, let's say, if you would do the 20 countries, it's probably around the 10K mark, maybe a little bit more, 20 countries. So just to give you an idea. So, but you don't need to invest it all at once in the beginning. What you do instead is you do Australia first, your home country, or wherever you are, UK or Germany. You do your home country first, and with that lodgement, with that filing in your home country, you buy 6 months time, which is called priority filing, where you block everyone in the world to register a similar or identical trademark in their country. So I make it as a plastic example. I am an Aussie business, small, from a garage, whatever, but I have high-flying dreams. I register in Australia. That gives me a file number. The trademark is pending. I can put even a TM in the upper right corner because trademark is valid from the filing date. Later on, when it's registered, you change the TM to an R, and it's backdated to the filing date. On the certificate, it puts the filing date of the date when protection commences. And the first 6 months, you have priority. So if someone in the US files something 4 months later, which is March 2024, and I still have a US trademark, I still don't have a US trademark in March, it's fine because I can come in April, which is within the 6 month time frame from filing in Australia, claim priority, basing my US filing then on the existing Australian filing, and that backdates the US filing to November. So As long as I have a home country filing, I buy 6 months time to decide which other countries do I need. Do I really need China, for instance? Everyone's, oh, China, China, China. Don't go to China if you never have a market there. Only because Chinese are supposedly copying everything, it doesn't matter. If China is not a market, don't spend money on China. But you can heavily shoot yourself in the foot if you think, oh, I need to protect 50 countries because I may need it in future, and you never need it. And also, you first, when you're small, you start with the foot in the door with your home country filing, and the following 6 months you can easily use these 6 months to get the funds to then make, and that leads me to the next point, to afford multiple country filings. And what is important to know, you don't do it country by country. You don't go to US, UK, European Union, China, Malaysia, whatever. What you do is, if you have multiple countries within the 6 month time frame, important, you go through World Intellectual Property Organization, a statutory body in Geneva. There's also an equivalent for patents, for registered industrial designs. It's an international statutory body with 180 or so countries that are members of that international treaty. It's a government organization from that treaty, and they're sitting in Geneva, and they're taking applications where you go on the website, also very accessible, and you tell them, okay, my home country filing is, let's say, for instance, Australia. And then you tick boxes of the countries that you also want to protect. You do this, it gives you a ballpark figure, no, not a ballpark figure, the exact figure of statutory fees that apply. You pay this, you submit the application through WIPO in Geneva, and they are like the spider in the net. They then, for you don't need to do anything. They distribute your application to US, to Canada, to UK, blah, blah, blah. And they keep you in the loop, what is happening with these applications. And then difficulties only arise if these specific countries, let's say the example of 25 or 20 countries, 3 or 4 of them, US is usually a pain in the ass when it comes to provisional refusals. They come back with letters, do this, or we won't accept, or it's too similar, or it's descriptive or something. So you receive from WIPO this correspondence and then have to deal with it. But you streamline it in the beginning so that you don't deal with any offices, and you pay one fee to WIPO. And let me tell you one last thing. Instead of dealing with 20 separate applications, 20 separate applications instead of one would mean you overpay in terms of statutory fees 5, 6, 7 times.
7 times.
It's crazy. Like the immediate thinking is, there are 10, 20 countries I want to protect, so I need to lodge 10, 20 applications. No. You heavily overspend. Don't do it. So
you mustn't. You got to have a strategy, is what I'm hearing you saying.
That's why we are offering this half an hour free consultation. Because we are thinking you can do it yourself if you want, but you need to have a proper basis to decide: A, is it worth doing it at all, or do I get myself into hot water? Lodging a trademark, because likelihood of confusion arises, trademark oppositions. Someone from these countries might sue you for alleged similarity. So at least you should have an idea of, will it be tough, the road ahead, or is it a walk in the park? And then if it's something in between, because it's neither a walk in the park nor super tough all the time, it's something in between, like always in life, then how do I respond to what is thrown at me? And am I be able to deal with this myself, or do I even have the time or want it? There are many people that talk to us that say, look, I'm super clever. I have 3 PhDs. I speak 5 languages. And I have plenty of time. I do it myself. I don't care, but I want to know what's behind it. And this is like me driving into a garage, the guy looking at me and say, mate, you need a new motor. It costs $10,000. And I go, what? Maybe you need $10,000. So what I want to understand is why. And if the guy can explain it to me, I'm more than happy to leave it to an expert, because I am so bad with tech stuff and I don't have the time. So this is what people need to understand. You don't have a proper basis to make a decision without speaking to someone who can tell you what is the pros and cons of what. And
the thing is that there, what you mentioned is also very important from a business perspective, in the sense that if you don't have the right protection in place, and you don't have to go expensive in the beginning, you can just get some paperwork done with the view of getting the process started and getting a bit of a game plan from someone like yourself. But by just following this process, which is so important, and yet a lot of people don't take it for granted, is that eventually your business doesn't become investable because you don't have enough protection. Your business does not have the opportunity for someone to buy you because you don't have the right protection. Your business also can't grow and scale because sometimes you're going to go make a whole lot of product and keep it in a warehouse, and then you find that you've been sued because you've infringed on copyright. So what you're saying is that by investing with you, by talking to you, you're actually saving a lot of money in the long run. And as much as people are trying to save money in the front, they're actually trying to save money in the long run. Is ultimately the importance of why ideas, brands, names, reputations need to be protected.
Yeah. And I come back to that example of the house. You don't start, if you have no clue about how to build a property, you don't start buying bricks, because how do you know you lay them, and you don't watch YouTube videos, start building your house.
There's plenty of people that actually do that.
Oh yes, there's a lot of people who do that. It's a new trend.
Okay, so even if you do that with the kind which refers to talking to experts, even if you consider there are people that they can do wonders if they read books and watch videos, fair enough, even if you can do it, but then you have built it and then you refuse to protect it, which is to stay with the picture of the house. You refuse to put door locks in. So what situation puts that in you into that situation? So you basically have a neighbor that likes your house too, sees that you have no door locks, and while you are working and you're away, the neighbor walks in because there are no door locks in, sits in your chair and eats from your fridge. This is what's happening.
Yeah, that's a very good example. Yeah.
If you build a nice and shiny house, and a house is property in English. The trademark is intellectual property. It is something, it's an intangible asset. A house is a tangible asset. IP, copyright, patent, trademark, registered design, plant breeders' rights, they are all intangible assets. They are values that you can't touch and see and take under your arm. You only see it and realize it when it has gone wrong. And
I really like what you've got there, Olaf, and thank you for taking the time to explain all of that to us, because it really highlights. People go, "Oh yeah, I'll trademark it. That's one of those things I'll get to, and I'll do that when I'm successful." I've heard that so many times, right? But tomorrow never comes, and
that's right.
that success that they're seeking is not necessarily there. And at what level are they successful? So I want to kind of shift gears here a little bit, because I'm sure after years and years of doing this, you've got some stories to tell, and I want to highlight something here, because I think it drives home the point of you must have a strategy. Sure, you can go and fill in the forms, you could go to that website in Geneva and do all those things, you could do it all yourself, but if you don't have a strategy behind that, then you're not going to understand what could go wrong. And so one thing, as you were talking there, and you're kind of in your explanation of that, I thought of a company that we all know and we all use a couple of times a day, Google. Remember when Google changed their name to Alphabet? And some dude owned the domain name alphabet.com. I would have just been sitting there going, 10 million? Nah. 20 million? Nah. 30 million? Warmer. 50 million? Warmer still. Yeah. So this is where the strategy that you're talking about really comes into play. And so the same thing happened I'm certain the same thing didn't happen with the domain name for Facebook, but Facebook changed their name from Facebook to Meta. And so there's some element of planning and protection that you have to go through before you just go, oh, we're going to rebrand and we're going to change the name of this business and we're going to do something else like that. Google came out publicly and said that they were going to change the name of the company to Alphabet for a whole range of reasons about accountability and whatnot, but they hadn't protected themselves. They hadn't even bought the domain name before they announced it publicly. So that kind of leads me to the question for you here. You know, I've got it up on the screen there. What are the top 3 mistakes business owners make? And I'm assuming that one of them is just being too late. They're too late to the party. The party's already gone on and then somebody else has pulled the rug.
Number one, there is no second chance.
Yeah, right.
There's no second chance. It's like you can even think of trademark protection. It's the first step before you even go to ESIC and register a business name, because registering a business name is a mere administrative act that allows you to trade under the name permitted by the government. That's all.
Trading as,
It's an administrative act. How many times do I have to tell people that ESIC registration doesn't give you any rights? But they go, oh, but I did it with the government. Yeah, IP Australia is also the government. You did it with the wrong statutory body, mate.
Wrong department.
Wrong department. That's really wrong. Again, an ESIC registration doesn't give you any rights. So the way I would do it, like, don't do the 4th step before the first. Do a proper search. First, do brainstorming. Come up with 5 different names. Number 1, your priority. Number 2, second priority. 3, third, and so forth. And then go on an Atmos, which is the Australian trademark database, Atmos database, and have a search. Do an identity search. Just type in this name that you want. And it will bring up all identical name, but also similar names. Then you could try to apply common sense. If it's too similar to your name, like visually, orally, from spelling, from connotation, you can just apply common sense and think, is it too similar? In cases of identity, it's an absolute 100% red hot, urgent, no, don't do it. Go to priority number 2. If it's somewhat similar, look at the goods and services. If you're selling clothing, footwear, headgear, or sporting equipment, then you need to protect, for instance, in class 25 for clothing. If there are others with a very similar name, you call yourself Red Rocket and there is a green socket mark.
Yeah.
You want Red Rocket for clothing, class 25, and there's a green socket in class 28, which is sporting articles and bags, which is a different class. But sporting articles and bags are often sold together on one point of sale with clothing, functional clothing. That's why it's almost an identity, even though it's a different class. And Red Rocket and green socket, over the phone, you don't even hear the difference. Orally, it's super similar. Red and green would be a point for dissimilarity because every idiot can be distinct between the. So there are pros and cons. And then if you are able to weigh up the pros and cons yourself, you're happy to go ahead and file the application. But that's the bit where you need to be careful. Can I, based on the search result that I get from Atmos, from IP Australia, for instance, can I confidently submit an application that will be appearing in monitoring large companies like Google, what else? Microsoft or Apple? They do regular monitoring. So they have brand departments, and they want to know what is the competition doing. So that's also what a monitoring shows you. What is my competitor doing? And along with these search result and monitoring, they see new applications that pop up with IP Australia, with WIPO, and so forth. So they will identify you, Red Rocket, Green Socket. You lodged in all confidence, lodged your Red Rocket thing. and all of a sudden a large company sends you a nasty letter saying, in our monitoring, you came across as a new application. We don't think so. Would you please stop this, sir, madam?
So how long does something like that generally take? I mean, if I feel like I've had it ass about face the whole time I've been doing business, where we just got to find a business name and then a domain. And when you got the domain, you put your flag in the ground, and I own that name and that bit of space. I've registered the trading name. Actually, if I go down that path and I end up down that path 6 months' time and then I get a letter, how long would it take for somebody to send you a letter? Is there an average amount of time? What happens?
Well, usually they do monthly monitoring. So on a monthly basis, they see new applications coming
But if I didn't put in an application there, they would never see that, would they?
They would see it the next day.
No, what I'm saying is, if I just went and bought a domain name and I registered, so I've got a company and I register a trading name, I've got a domain name, I go and set up my website and I go begin trading and continue the activity, but I haven't checked in IP Australia, nor have I tried to file for the registration of the trademark or the IP protection, no one would know about that, would they?
Well, the public register is available for everyone, and it's once you submit an application and 1 day later you have an application number, you come up in the search results. And what I just said, it's immediately available, and these large companies, they don't have a human being sitting there searching the net. That is all done by AI and software, and they get the AI and software spits out a search result. And if you are on that list, they send you a letter, because especially large companies with deep pockets, they don't give a shit about cost. Whatever it costs, we don't want a dilution of our very valuable brand. We want you to stop. And we see so many cases where small or medium-sized businesses, even though they are not at the peak of their famousness, they receive letters to lay down flat now or else. We sue you, even though in situation where we tell the client, you have a leg to stand on. They are not going to be successful. However, they push this through. They sue you, they lodge oppositions for no reason, simply because they have deeper pockets and try to scare
bury you with legal fees, and stop shop.
On the other hand, even if they have all Harvard lawyers and they have billions of dollars, after all, luckily the law succeeds. And if they lose, they have to reimburse you for all the costs that you incurred. Yeah. So after all, you are the one laughing, still standing with your brand that they were contesting. So stand tall, stand up to the bullies.
But Olaf, when you get these people a little bit clever, like I remember when Uber came out, then everyone tried to take the name and attach Uber to their service. So they'll go Uber gardening services and stuff. There's always people trying to be clever to piggyback on someone who's got a little bit of success.
That's not possible at all. So we get this question every now and then. Would it be enough if I change one letter, if I put something in front, if I put something behind the name, if I use another logo or something? After all, it's the overall appearance, comparing your trademark and the other trademark side by side, comparing them visually, orally, in relation to connotation, spelling, and then comparing the goods and services. And then taking an objective view and asking yourself, would the relevant public, so what is your potential customer? For clothing, it's the everyday person. For scientific equipment, it's scientists. Would these people confuse it? And there's also the international judgments in relation to when is a trademark likely to be deceived. There are principles to determine likelihood of confusion, and it starts with visual, oral, connotation, similarity, but also depending on what your relevant public is. I give you an example. For if you are a bakery and you have a nice logo and an unusual name. Again, Red Rocket also. Red Rocket has no relation to bread rolls, so it's super distinct. the everyday person, the everyday consumer is the relevant public here. And the everyday consumer seems to, that is what courts around the world in all WIPO country members have ruled. The everyday person is rushing through. The everyday person is not comparing your brand name with another, analyzing. They have no clue. They think with the slightest similarity, they think, they are somehow related to it. Let's say you call yourself Applebite. There's Apple, and you call yourself Applebite, and you do electronic equipment or related services. They would at least think that you're a sub-brand of Apple.
Yeah.
And I can see how that would happen.
If you are, I'll try to make another example. If you're selling scientific equipment, it's clearly related not to the everyday person, but to scientists and engineers and stuff. And these guys and business people, and these guys, according to judgments around the world, they are more related to comparing brands. They know how business works. They're not rushing. They tend to analyze things more. So here the gap can be smaller. So in my Apple example, they would immediately know, or they would at least look at, they wouldn't fall for it. They wouldn't think immediately you are Apple. They think of, okay, Applebite, it's whatever, but it has nothing to do with software. And that is depending on what your relevant public is, you determine likelihood of confusion. And it's one of the main things that you need to be aware of. What is the relevant public of the goods and services on your side and on the allegedly infringing side? And then you determine likelihood of confusion. And based on your finding,
what are the three mistakes that businesses make? So we said second chance.
Not caring about IP protection early enough. When receiving a trademark, a letter of demand, not responding, like go hiding and trying to like go blindfolded. You won't see myself.
You can't see me. I can't see you.
I can't see you. You can't see me. Nothing will happen. And not doing regular monitoring when you have a brand, because even if you register, you should be aware what else is there. And if you allow similar brands to be around, similar trademarks to apply, you dilute your trademark. So it's worth a lot in the beginning. And the more you allow to use similar names, it becomes acceptable. And so your brand is devalued every time there are other 50 similar marks around, because no one, it blurs out. Where it was the Red Rocket example was, wow, Red Rocket, very distinctive for this service. Now you have all sorts of rocket marks or red marks in the same industry. No one can distinct between them anymore, and the value of your brand shrinks when it comes to when you ask someone to do a brand valuation. They're also looking for how many similar marks are around. And if you allow, that's exactly the reason why these large companies are so aggressive with infringements. They don't want this to happen. So what did I say? Not lodge early enough, don't do monitoring, and don't take of demand serious.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, on the opposite of that, what would be maybe not so much related to IP, but here we are in the Brand Scientist podcast, and we're discussing brand and what makes brand valuable. That's certainly one of the things that an accountant is going to look for when I'm going to purchase a business. I get my guy to go and look at that guy's business, and I'm looking and seeing he's looking for brand protection, he's looking for IP, trademarks, etc. What are some other things maybe that you've experienced over your years of doing this that you could see and share with the audience? So what are some brand insights that you would have?
It starts at the very beginning. When you think of coming up with a name, like what First of all, there's a decision, do I even want a distinctive name, or do I want to use a name that is super common? If you use a name that is that immediately tells the relevant public what you're selling, let's say, I make an example.
One
Global,
IP International.
Now, global travel. Now, the distinctive part of One IP International is not IP, is not international, because
That's one.
Intellectual property is IP and international is international. But one, when you just hear the word one, and that's why we have a word trademark for one, for just one, it doesn't tell you anything. And that's why it's the perfect brand. It's the perfect
because it's a universal thing. It can't be confused.
It doesn't give you an idea what is behind that. If I go on the street and make a survey, and I ask all 20 million Australians, no one is able to tell that one stands for intellectual property services, like from a description. If I ask them, what does global travel mean? They go, probably a travel agent or yeah. So that is, choose a name that is not descriptive at all, because no one remembers a descriptive name. You become one amongst thousands, and I see this every now and then. I need a name that gives the relevant public a clue about what I'm doing. No, please don't. Please. You let's say if you have a bakery, call yourself Red Rocket. It seems silly, but in the long run, you want to, when you start building a reputation, and you became famous for the best bread in town. When your name is Red Rocket, because Red Rocket is so unusual for a bakery, it's not called Bread Rolls 24/7 or something. Bread Rolls 24/7, no one remembers that. In fact, they're using you. Google has that problem. Google it. Like people say, Google it. They don't want it because it becomes a verb for search. They don't want it because it becomes descriptive. So that's the danger. You need to make sure that people are not using your brand name as a description for something, because then you're losing the distinctiveness. So find a distinctive name. Having a descriptive name is an absolute no-no. Please.
Well, when we go back to the early 1990s and maybe the 1980s in an office, and somebody said, "Can you just Xerox that for me?" That meant to photocopy it. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? So Xerox is a really strong brand, but it's very distinct.
Yeah, Xerox is still very distinct. When people start to use it in a descriptive way, that is the danger that these brand owners need to prevent from happening. However,
a word like Xerox doesn't. You're in no danger of that because it starts with the letter freaking X, for heaven's sakes. Yeah, and Uber as well starts with the letter U. You know, so
no, but Hoover,
man, I gotta say, hoovering, hoovering is the same thing, vacuuming, right? So I gotta say,
find a distinctive name, not a descriptive name.
Yeah, got you.
Distinctive, not descriptive. Grant, I have to say, man, I gotta have a little kind of jab here because it's kind of funny for you. Is that one of Grant's little catch cries about branding all the time is you must brand early and you must brand often, and it's the number 2 thing that the business owner should be focusing on all the time. And here is Olaf saying you must brand early and often, and he's saying it right from the start, right out of the gate. That was the number 1 tip that you had. So that's it's really good. See, Grant, you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid, mate, and it's validated there 100%, for you.
100%. That's why Philip and I are friends. We talk the same language.
There it is. All right, so the negative things that are there, check your IP first. ASIC won't protect you. You must do something about it. If somebody tells you to cease and desist, don't ignore that. You must use keep on searching. Keep searching. Yeah. A non-descriptive name so you don't become into the verbiage of vernacular. So what's one more positive thing there? And then we'll close it out with that one.
So if you have your ducks in a row, IP right, in relation to IP rights, what you're growing without seeing it is your revenue stream for retirement, because you're building, and I spoke about property, intellectual property, in a similar way as you're building one block after another, renting it out to people, making money. You're building invisible blocks by brand number one, brand number two, and the more you use it, the more everyone talks about it, the more value is behind that. And that wouldn't be the case if it would not be registered. Something that is owned by everyone or owned by no one isn't worth anything. If you own this word and somehow you did an awesome job, everyone is banging against your door, is ripping the products off your hands, and everyone in the whole world, your stuff is in demand. All of a sudden, your brand goes up in value and goes up and goes up without you doing anything. And the reason why you should do your brand in this, like in the first place, it's protecting you against aggression from outside, someone attacking you, wanting to stop you, wanting to take over, so to make you feel safe. But even more so, over the years, your hard work of building that reputation, red rocket for a bakery, no one cares because it's silly. But if you're doing a good service, if your bread rolls are second to none in town, it's that work that contributes to the reputation. And that's why everyone wants to have it easy and want to have an elusive or descriptive name that people rush into the shop immediately. No, the other way around is true. Use an unusual, people laugh at you, Apple, ha 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 ha, how funny, and that bite of logo, they're immature, how stupid, blah blah blah. Guess who laughs last? So now everyone wants them, and they're not called International Service Software Service Company. If they would be called International Software Service Company, no one would talk about this brand. But because Apple is so unusual, it is a perfect, spot on, super valuable brand. And now back to my point. So you build over the next 10, 20, 30 years something that grows in value without, all you do is you do your core business and you do it in an awesome way. And by doing that, you raise the value of your brand. And if you retire, you can either sell it. That's what many small businesses try to do. They build something that they can then later sell. And when it was a company that was worth 50,000 in the beginning, it might be worth 5 million then. Yeah. You wouldn't have that if you wouldn't have registered a trademark. Again, something that is available to everyone and is not owned by anyone isn't worth anything. So that is you diversify to other countries. Let's say you roll out your brand internationally, the value of your brand grows even more. At the end, when you sell this, I sold a business once and went to an accountant to put a number plate on my business, and they looked at the intellectual property, and there will be a value for just you owning a registered design or a patent for your product, copyright for a process, and trademark for your name and your logo. And maybe you have a jingle, a sound, or something that identifies you. What they want to see is, do you have IP in place? And then there is sort of a market value. What is that brand worth? An unused trademark that is just registered starts between 50,000 and 100K. Without you even having used that brand, it's worth 50K. Let that sink in. Why? Because they say, well, it's a valid business. It's not nothing. It is something already, and it can only grow. But it starts with a very high value, so it can be worthwhile. No, not it can be. It's an absolute must for a small business to register their brand name or logo, because they immediately add to the value of the business. And if they sell it a year later, it's so much worth more than without registration.
It's an investment in your brand,
and it's like buying shares. You just register and you do awesome work in your core business. what you do anyway, and you're doing that because you consider yourself an expert in the industry. Otherwise, you wouldn't run that business. Why would you? As a taxi driver, I wouldn't run a taxi business if I can only ride a bike, but I don't have a driver's license. So you are the expert in what you're doing, and all you need to do is deliver good service. And by doing that, you have happy customers and you grow your brand in the background without you knowing it. And then comes the time when you want to retire. You look for someone to buy your business, and it's a fact that large companies like Microsoft, they buy smallest businesses for them having developed good small software apps, or they're just an add-on for them. And without a proper, they can then also buy your brand, and they don't have to develop something. This brand is already known. They just use this instead of you, and they pay you $1 million, $5 million for you having done the work for them.
Yeah, I love it. It's a really, really good explanation of it. We've run over a little bit of time here, but that's because I couldn't get a word in and Olaf's busy explaining what he explains, but I was drawn all the way into it, and I really appreciate you taking so much time to go into the detail of it. It's very nuanced, and I found it quite interesting. So that was a really valuable insight for me as the host of the Brand Scientist podcast. I learned something there, and hopefully the audience did as well. If you want to connect with Olaf, just visit one.law, or you can email him at ip@one.law. And down below in the description, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have a link to his Calendly. If you want to book in a 30-minute call with him, you can. Please have a look at that. Please head over to that website. If you're a business watching this, if you're an entrepreneur watching this, make sure you've protected your IP. If you're watching this overseas, please reach out to Olaf, and he will help you to navigate the challenges of that in your particular country, because he has the depth of expertise to be able to do that. Olaf, like I always do at the end of the show here, I like to give the guests the final word. Have you got one final piece of wisdom for us here on the Brand Scientist podcast?
Yeah, certainly. As I already said, it's never too early to protect your brand in the form of a word mark, a slogan, a logo, a sound, or even a smell, something that is your badge of origin. Ask yourself, how do your customers, your potential customers, your potential clients identify you amongst your competition? If you walk into a supermarket and you walk through the aisles trying to find your favorite soup, how do you identify in what tin your favorite soup is without the banderole? People choose you by the brand. And if you want to establish your brand, there's no second chance. In IP in general, there is the principle of first come, first serve. Like with domains, there is, once it's gone, it's gone. So then you can cry, but prevent crying. Do it as early as possible. I don't know how many times today I'm saying that. I don't know how many times the day it's brushed off, this argument, with people returning to us. Oh, I should have listened to you. I should have. We are lawyers, but we're not magicians, so we can't make wonders. We almost always can have a plan B, but that plan B is a second choice, and I guarantee you it will feel like second choice for you. So don't let that happen. Do your branding. Do your registration. Branding is only developing a badge of origin. Do your registration of your brand ASAP.
Love it. Great advice. And thank you so much for joining Grant and I here on the show. Gentlemen, let's round it out with that one. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. It's bye for now.
Bye.